elections. Let's bring in tonight's Bream Team panel to debate Democratic strategist Kevin Wally and the Federalist co-founder Sean Davis. Great to have you both back with us.
Hey, Shannon, good to see you.
Okay, let's start here on the DHS memo. This is actually from the website. This is what it says. Key factors contributing to the current heightened threat environment include, number one, the proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. For example, there is widespread online proliferation of false or misleading narratives regarding unsubstantiated widespread election fraud and COVID-19. Sean.
Yes, I find this absolutely fascinating, mainly because I was alive and cognizant from 2016 through today. And I remember how so much of the corporate media and the Democrat Party reacted to Trump winning in 2016. They told us that Russia stole the election, that there was collusion, that the president was a traitor. And so I just have a really hard time looking at what happened in the past 5 years and taking anything seriously from this particular regime when they decide that it's only right now that things that are on the internet that might not be true are somehow a threat to the nation.
Well, Alex Berenson is a former New York Times reporter who has been covering the pandemic from the beginning, doing a lot of investigative work, has gotten himself kicked off Twitter, in part at least for making statements that were misleading then, but have now turned out to be true and are part of mainstream thought. He says this on his Substack. He says, this federal agency says that to undermine public trust in government institutions is now considered terrorism. Speech doesn't even have to encourage rebellion or violence generally, much less against anyone specific. It just has to, quote, potentially inspire violence. So who's defining misleading? Misleading to whom and misleading how? And Kevin, you know, mainstream groups like CDC, NIH, Fauci, Walensky, I mean, these people are saying things now that were considered misleading and would get you kicked off of social media months ago.
Well, Shannon, it's important to look at the actual bulletin itself, and I did. And these serve as advisories. These go out all the time from the Department of Homeland Security, and it's just a warning to law enforcement of sometimes the dangers with misinformation when it becomes weaponized, like we saw on January 6th. This is not a specific action against any individuals or individual groups. It's a warning that this kind of misinformation, especially around the election and the big lie, could be dangerous, as we saw play out on January 6th. Now, again, attacking the CDC and the frustrations with that, I totally understand that because their mindset has changed, the science has changed to some degree, seemingly, as this pandemic has gone on. I think the real danger is the continual peddling of the big lie and it being weaponized in state capitals and in Washington.
Well, yeah, you mentioned that because that's definitely mentioned there. But obviously, they talk about COVID-19 repeatedly through this as well. And the Pew Research program now has some interesting polling to several of these points on the eroding confidence in a number of people, public health officials, the CDC, the president. We've got charts here that show people have lost their trust in a number of these institutions. The president is down 14 points in the time they've been tracking it. Hospitals, health officials, also big drop-offs. Public health officials such as those at the CDC have dropped from 79% confidence down to 50%. Sean, people have reasons that they doubt some of these folks.
They have very good reasons for doubting it, and it turns out that institutions lose people's trust when they lie to people for years, when they tell people that they have to ban them from the internet, that they have to censor things on Twitter or Facebook. We've heard a lot lately about disinformation or conspiracy theories, and my experience over the last 2 years leads me to believe that when I hear the term conspiracy theory, I translated that into my head as something that's true, that's inconvenient to the people in charge of the government right now.
Well, that doesn't always turn out to be the truth for conspiracy theories, but a lot of folks have felt that way over the last couple of years. Let's talk about how this is impacting the president and his polling as well, because he's dropped to a new low. The Real Clear Politics averages have him down, and this is presidents all at the same point in their first term. President Bush obviously coming after 9/11 and the country rallying around each other and him at that point, so a very high number for him. But we see President Obama at 48%, President Trump at 42%, President Biden now at 38.3%. Kevin, from Afghanistan to inflation to COVID, people are very frustrated with this president, and those numbers have got to be tough for the White House.
They certainly are, Shannon, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said numbers are down across the board with anyone in positions of trust, because I think these numbers are reflective of just how frustrated the American people are going into the third year of this pandemic. Our hopes were so high in July when, the masks came off, and that was before Delta, of course, and then heading into the fall, into the winter with Omicron. And I think those numbers are specifically reflective of COVID. Certainly, inflation is a concern. We're hopefully going to see that having peaked last fall with those numbers coming down in terms of the reporting going into spring. But certainly, I think those numbers specifically are really focused on the frustrations around COVID.
Well, as all good Americans should, we want the economy and COVID and all of these situations to be much better for all of us, and that our president would have
Amen.
success on those things that we'd all like to see improved. All right, Kevin and Sean, thank you both very much.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.